And we're going to get started. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's awesome webinar with Julie Thannum on ethics and social media. So we're going to get started here. All the slides and a recording of this presentation are going to be emailed to you probably later today, if not today, tomorrow. So take notes. You're certainly going to want to take notes today. I'm a note taker. And somebody's not seeing video. Is everybody else seeing video? Hopefully everybody else is. Just give me a nod to make sure. You're seeing the video, right, Julie?
I am, yes.
Okay. And if everybody, okay, Marcy can see it. So Randy, I'm so sorry you can't see the video, but you should be able to. But all the slides in the recording are going to be sent to you. If you're on social media, we love Twitter. Twitter is such a great place to connect. You can follow both myself and Julie at Andrea Gribble and at Julie Thannum, and also hashtag Social School for EDU. So if you see a great slide, or you just want to let people know that, hey, I'm hanging out today for my lunch with Julie and Andrea, it would be awesome to be able to tag us. That's a great place to connect. So today, you're in the right place if you feel a little bit like this, maybe even on a daily basis with social media. It can be a difficult thing to navigate. And, you know, ethics in social media is way more than doing the right thing. There's a lot more that goes into it. And sometimes the decisions you make today are going to affect the decisions that are expected to be made tomorrow or you know, later next month. And so we have a lot to think about because we are reaching thousands of people. So you're definitely in the right place if you feel like, hey, sometimes this is a little bit confusing. Now you're in the wrong place if you're like this guy, he's got his Ray-Bans on and he sees clearly all things social media, has all the answers. And it could be a gal too, that if you're thinking you got all the answers, then maybe you don't need this webinar. I think it's going to be a great place to be able to connect, talk about struggles we've had, and learn from each other. So I am your host. My name's Andrea Gribble. I am from Woodbury, Minnesota, which is a suburb of St. Paul. I am the owner of Social School for EDU. We've been serving schools since 2014. We've shared more than 300,000 posts, worked with more than 70 school districts on the social media management side. I'm married to an awesome entrepreneur, and we have 6 kids. I've got 2 daughters, and I've got 4 stepsons. So we are busy, especially leading up to the holidays and trying to get my shopping done. I'm a blogger, I'm a talker, I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories about our schools, about our students, about our staff members that are doing awesome things. And Social School for EDU is really here to help schools create awesome social media. You can have good social media. We want you to have great social media. And our mission is really simple. We want to celebrate students, and we want to connect communities. And that's what we're all about. Social media is really about celebrating your school one story at a time, one video at a time, one moment, right? And that's what it's about. School communications is really big. And some of what Julie's going to talk about today obviously impacts even more than just social media. But we know communication is a big job for any district. But we think social media can be used to fight back against maybe some of the negative that can be out there. And I love this George Kiros quote. It's one of my favorites. Pause just a second because you probably want to take a picture of it. But you know, we need to make the positive so loud that the negative becomes almost impossible to hear. And I know each and every one of you are doing that on a daily basis. Social School for EDU has a lot of free resources. We got a blog. We do monthly webinars like this. We have some Facebook posts and Twitter posts and just helpful articles. And then we also have a business. So we do management, we do coaching, which I'm going to talk a little bit about at the end. We do graphics packages for schools. So that's a little bit about us. Now I'm going to introduce you to Julie, and then she's going to take it away. Julie Thannum, and she's accredited in public relations. She's had 28 years in public, in school communications. Oh. And she's actually the assistant superintendent for board and community relations at Carroll ISD in Southlake, Texas, home of the Dragons, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so we love bragging on the dragons. She's past president of the Texas School Public Relations Association. That's TSPRA. She's also past president of the National School Public Relations Association. So that's called NSPRA. And she presents around the state of Texas, but she's also a national speaker on topics related to school safety, communications, marketing, ethics, educational leadership, website accessibility, and branding. I went through those quick because, Julie, if we got into too many of those, they'll be like, oh, I'm going to ask a question about this or that. We could go on a lot. So I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to kick it over to you so that you can share your screen with everybody.
Okay, let's see what happens here. And somehow my presentation's gone, but I'm going to pull it back up. Bear with me a minute. I don't know where it went.
We had it all set up because we didn't want to have to go through this, but
you knew that was going to happen, right? It just does.
There it is.
Let's get it back here and start it full screen. And tell me if you see it.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. I'm super excited. Andrea talked to me about talking on this topic, and ethics is something that I spent a lot of time going around the nation talking during my time as NSPRA president. But ethics in social media specifically is a new topic here with Andrea and all the listeners. So I really appreciate that this opportunity and want everybody to know that this is kind of a new presentation adapted with some of the ethics discussions. So I'm going to jump in and get started, and Andrea's going to help me watch for questions and things like that, but we will certainly have some time for questions definitely at the end, and we're going to have a little engagement with a poll as we get going here too. One of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is ethics. A lot of times people think is just telling the truth. It just means that you have integrity and that you're a truth teller. But ethics, to me, I've learned is so much more than that. And as I traveled around and talked to educators in public education, private education, and even higher education, I found out that a lot of people really had no training in ethics. They maybe had taken a law class if they were came up through journalism, but in education, they would have education law, but there wasn't a lot of discussion about ethics as it applies day to day. And one of the things I think I was most surprised by getting into the school PR business in this profession is how our ethics can be tested almost daily. But ethics are kind of the rules or guidelines that not only establish what conduct is right and wrong, but as Andrea and I discussed, it's actually a little bit more sometimes between what is right, or as I would put it, what is best. And sometimes these ethics are imposed on us as individuals or for our group or by the ethics that our organizations want for us. And sometimes there are our own personal ethics that get tested when we're in the middle of situations. So this is kind of a way for us to talk about social media and how you have to make ethical decisions every day. As it's a lot of power. I think in the movie Spider-Man, Marvel and Stan Lee will tell you that with power comes great responsibility, and we have to really be careful because with the push of send or post or tweet, we are able to reach a lot of individuals, and we're speaking for organizations in a lot of cases or our school districts. And so it's important for us to think about the ethical side of it. Ethics really doesn't depend on the platform you're talking about, but I like the idea because social media has grown so much in school districts, a lot of us have, it was kind of thrust upon us. I would say that I went in kind of kicking and screaming, and I feel like it was a good move on my part. But we were a little slower to get in the social media game in Carroll ISD because I really wanted to look at it from a strategic standpoint. And a lot of people in their school districts were just jumping in. They were just using it. And I would ask questions like, well, what is the purpose? What is your goal? What are your outcomes? And it was just like, you can reach a lot of people. And I really got that answer from very seasoned veterans that this is just a great way for us to reach a lot of people. But reach them with what? What message? What are you using it for? And so we went very slowly into social media. And I actually think it served us well. We spent a lot of time talking about policy, and we spent a lot of time training staff. And and I feel like I need to knock on wood here. And so you're going to hear me do that, because I have had the great experience that our staff members very rarely get us into any kind of situations with their social media posts. They are so good at what they do. And I'm talking about classroom teachers, principals, support staff. We have a lot of campuses and a lot of teachers in some campuses that are required as part of their campus plan to tweet regularly out of the classroom. And so we are very active on social media. I hope you'll go on and follow us at Carroll ISD, but we've got a lot of hashtags, and I might mention a few of those as we're going through, but I'm happy for you to contact me at any time about what some of those hashtags are used for. But ethics really needs to be a foundational thing, no matter the platform that you're communicating on, but we're going to specifically address it here with social media. And it really has more to do with two things: your personal core values. What do you stand for? What do you believe? What's important to you? What are your non-negotiables? And also the core values of your organization. And we should note here that sometimes your core values and your organization's core values don't always align. And you find yourself in situations where they may be asking you to do something that doesn't really sit well with your personal core values. And it really causes you to assess the situation. And sometimes we'll ask educators to step out. And this is just a good example we're dealing with in our district right now. Race relations, tension. We had a racial slur video that went viral on social media, and I was dealing with that even last week when Andrea and I were trying to get ready for this, and we had 3 million views on that video in just a few days, and it got out of control very fast. But more important than anything was calling all of our administrators and our staff to have the difficult dialogue and the discussion about inclusion, about treating those with differences equally, equity, and all that we're doing. And I found myself disappointed sometimes in the responses I got from individuals. They're good people. It's not that. So sometimes they're not embracing or getting that whole big picture, and they may not have ever been challenged or thought about that it isn't just about tolerating differences. It's about embracing them and valuing them and welcoming them and celebrating them. And not everybody had that response. It's been an interesting path that we go through. But my personal core values tend to align with my districts very well, and that makes me a happy person. And so it's something you really need to look at. If you have never thought about the things that are your non-negotiables, then you really need to conduct an activity where you think about what are your personal core values. And that's probably a whole webinar in and of itself, so I won't elaborate on that too much. But I think it should be noted that sometimes you may be asked to do things and you're going to have to make a decision about whether or not it aligns with your personal core values, or if you can do what you're being asked to do. Hopefully you're not being asked to do anything that violates some of your core things. But I got to tell you, there have been times throughout my career, not currently, but throughout my career, when I had to stop and think, I don't know that I want to do that, or that I want to be a person that does that. And so I'll elaborate on that a little bit more later. I have a little plaque in my office, several little plaques in my office, but one of them that says integrity is who you are when no one's watching. And I really like that, because I do think your core values and your ethics are foundational, and applying it to different platforms can be challenging at times. But really, once you know what your non-negotiables are, again, the platform shouldn't matter. I also have a plaque in my office that says, I totally agree with myself. So you can just kind of balance those out. Tells you a little bit about me, right? But I do like the idea that your integrity is who you are, even if no one's watching. If you never get credit for the decisions you're making, that you're making decisions that align with your core values. In the social world, though, everyone's watching. They're always watching, and whatever you send out, as we experienced recently with our viral video that went out, whatever gets sent out, it's out there. It's making a digital footprint, and it's one of the hardest things in social media is try to retract or take back something that you didn't want out there. There are some platforms that don't even allow you to edit. All you can do is delete, and when you delete, it's really not gone. And so someone who has captured that tends to comment on it. And again, it's very, very hard in the social media world. If you violate some sort of ethical practice, then you need to realize that it's something that you could be dealing with for a very long time. It's a hard lesson for our students to learn. It's a hard lesson for our staff to learn. But I think as kids are growing up, I tell our parents all the time, you would never look at your fifth grader and throw them the keys and say, go figure out the car, right? We would never do that. As moms or parents, we would never do that. But we do that with their phones, and we do that with social media, and we let them get accounts very young and without any kind of guidance. Or really, we don't even always understand it ourselves. And so we spend a lot of time in Carroll ISD talking to parents, having meetings, showing them just apps to watch out for and things like that. But all of that kind of talking to them about ethics and about the decisions their kids are making about what to put online and what information to share. Social media, in my mind, I hear you say, Andrea, 28 years, and it seems like it's flown by. But social media has changed everything in this job. It has. And people have now become both the producer of information and the consumer. And so you have what we call Mojo, which are mobile journalists. And I see people all the time post a video that they're on the scene of an accident, or someone's being abused or hurt, and there's someone they're videoing actually instead of actually helping. And it makes me realize that we're making ethical decisions all the time. And so even as you see people videotaping things to make them public and share that information, and maybe it's for a good reason, maybe it's social injustice, maybe it's something that they really want to shine a light on some dark thing that's happening, but it really makes me wonder about what causes us to want to take video and be the producer of information rather than to step up ethically and stop an injustice from happening. And so we make decisions ethically all the time like that. And quite frankly, it's getting harder and harder for us to tell what's truth. I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of hearing fake news. It's just something that, as a former journalist, it's a struggle for me to know even which news agencies are being objective or telling me accurate information or what slants they have. And again, that could be a whole nother webinar topic, but it's hard. And so what our people that are engaging with us on social media want is they really want credible sources, and they want to know that what they're getting is truth. And you need to set yourself up to be that credible source for your school district, for your campus, and whatever role that you're serving. And in addition, it kind of goes without saying that there's a lot of political discord that's happening. And quite frankly, just a lot of unkind and hateful things that we're seeing on social media. I think that's a trend that I hope that we start policing ourselves a little bit more. And people seem to have forgotten just some basic relationship etiquette and simple manners. And those are ethical decisions. When you go to post, when you go to respond, the words you choose, they matter. And they matter greatly because you're a representative of your school district. And so we seem to, in some conversations, we've kind of lost that simple manners, At the same time, people are battling between free speech, social responsibility, holding people accountable, and they're using social media to do it. So it can be a great platform for that. But it doesn't take very long to get yourself in a back and forth with someone who's upset with you on social media before you get yourself in an ethical dilemma of, do I reply? Do I reach out to them personally? Is there another platform I should choose? Those are all ethical decisions that you're making on the fly. I remember at an NSPR conference, the school staff in Ferguson, Missouri said you can literally become a hashtag overnight. And I think that is how social media is shaping the information we receive, the information we send out, and the ethical decisions that we're making every day. So I think it's a powerful tool. And in the wrong hands, quite frankly, it can be used for a lot of negativity. In all honesty, I warned Andrea I was going to say this. Social media is time consuming. It can really, really create a lot of drama in your life in public education, and it often tests us at our personal core values. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's a love-hate relationship with me. 1 minute I love it, and 1 minute I would really like to not have the responsibility of following up and engaging on social media at all. I look at this picture that I have in the PowerPoint and I think all the feels, right? That's what social media gives me, because when I need to get a message out, we have over 13,000 followers on our Twitter account alone. And we are a fairly small district in Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have 8,700 students. So to have that many followers is pretty great. But it causes me to pause at times when we're going to make sure that my word choices and the things that I'm speaking and saying and posting are in line with what my district wants and what I believe ethically. I'm advancing, and let's see, all of a sudden, okay, there we go. What really people want is they want to know who to go to trust. They want credible information. And I'm really proud in Carroll ISD that I believe that we have set ourselves up. I think we took a lot of time to develop great policy. We trained staff. We knew we were very strategic. We have an acceptable use policy. We have an employee policy that actually sets us up that even though our employees do have free speech rights, they also know that the things they say on their personal sites can affect their job, especially if they are mentioning or sharing information about their job or about Carroll ISD. So we wrote really strong policy for that very early on, and we've had it for years. I'm happy to share that AUP with Andrea and with all our listeners. Certainly we're always evaluating that to see any changes in the law, any new case law and things like that. But we believe strongly that a teacher doesn't stop being a teacher when they walk out the door. They're role models. They're held to a higher standard. We all are in public education. And so it becomes very important that the decisions we're making, even on our personal accounts, are well thought through. And now that I've, kind of shared the love-hate relationship, I'll talk about the love part of it, because social media has just changed our day, and it's our two-way public engagement piece that we really can't replace in any other way. There's no newsletter, there's no any other thing that I can point to that has the greatest impact than when we tweet or we post on Facebook, or we get what my moms in South Lake like to call a private group of 6,000 people. I don't know how private that feels, but they have these closed groups and there's over 6,000 people in them, and they like to talk a lot about schools and community issues, and most of the time it's really great. Sometimes they're not happy with us, and so we monitor that, but we see that. But more than anything, we want to engage with them. We want to answer their questions. We want to become the credible source. So we have a responsibility, I believe, in public education to survey our constituents, our parents, our staff, our students, to study their posting habits, to use all the analytical tools that we have available to us and things that Andrea knows way more about than I do, but to maximize our engagement opportunities and really make the most out of this very powerful thing that we have available to us. And, to me, these are two of my personal core values, truth and transparency. I talk a lot about those in my work here in Carroll ISD as a TSPRA member and past president, and definitely as an NSPRA member. Truth and transparency, to me, people need to know that what I say is going to be truthful, and to the extent the law allows, that I'm going to be as transparent as I'm able. And if you even talk to the reporters that I visit with and ask me questions, I will tell them, there are laws or there are things that protect that information, and I cannot share them because we follow the law. But I will be as transparent as I can if you want to ask me policy questions and things like that. So I believe truth and transparency, they build trust, but I don't think it happens overnight. I don't think people automatically trust you anymore just because you're an educator or just because you work for public school. I think that you have to build that trust over time, and there are things that you can do and decisions that you can make that actually break that trust down, and you have to gain that trust back. And so we want our families to know that we are making ethical, good decisions for kids, and the way we post, how often we post, what we post, and our own word choices, they do matter to our parents. I think we got to start with policy, and I don't want to labor this too much, but I think policy can be the great foundation for they make the ethical day-to-day decisions a lot easier when you have the policy to back you up. And I'm going to give you some real visuals and some examples of that. But as we look at policy, an effective policy on social media will set really clear expectations for your staff, but it will also talk about consequences. And we don't elaborate too much on consequences because we give ourselves the flexibility. And I'll explain that more later. But I have a slide that talks about the fact that we are more protective than punitive. So our policies teach staff what we expect and what we hope they'll do. We give them some tools to be able to learn more about social media, the power of posting, the ethical decisions, and the policies that our district has. And then we try not to be punitive, but we try to teach. We let them be risk takers. And so I think we have a real history of helping our staff. And man, they just take off. They're phenomenal. If you follow some of our teachers and some of our campuses and our hashtags, they're doing great work. And they are telling the story, and that's what we really want. But we want them to be able to do that knowing kind of what's the right and wrong way to do it, and what the district's expectations are. So our policy ought to set that forth. It also ought to outline what kind of permission they need to set up accounts. We really spend a lot of time talking about personal versus public. And I'll go ahead and put that bullet there. We encourage public posts over private posts. So there are some real strong laws in Texas about one-on-one communicating with students, between students and educators. And so we encourage public over private posts. So you'll see us use tools that are group messages and public messages where parents, if they ask for them, even if we're talking to student interns or teachers are talking to students, they're going to use Google Docs. They're going to use group kind of things like Canvas and other programs where parents can actually log in, see what conversations are happening, see what notices and conversations that teachers and students are having. And that really helps parents have a good comfort level that there's not a lot of private conversations going on, especially through social media. We emphasize professional over personal platforms all the time. And we don't mandate in our district that you have to have a professional account. We encourage it. But we also model how you can have a personal account and still be ethical in your post and follow policy. And my superintendent is a great example, and myself. I do not have two accounts. So I will post sometimes about Carroll ISD, but it really is my personal account. We have a district account that we post on. But for me personally, I want to model for our staff that if you only want to manage one account, like on Twitter or on Facebook, you really can make good ethical decisions and understand your responsibility as a public educator and manage that on one account. My daughter, who's a classroom teacher, has two accounts. She has a personal account, and then she has a teacher, second grade account at her campus at Johnson Elementary School. And so that is an example of how the policy gives some flexibility to our staff. We don't mandate they can't friend students, but we teach them all the concerns about why they might not want to do that, or if they do, some of the pitfalls and things to watch out for. And so we spend a lot of time offering sessions and giving handouts and doing answering questions to our teachers about our policies and going over. They all sign it when they get hired, but I know that they don't all read it. So we go back on district days of learning, professional development days, and we make sure that they get an opportunity to know what the policy actually says that they signed. And all of us are guilty of that, by the way. Before we feel too bad about teachers signing something without reading it, we all do that on those software agreements and everything. We're like, oh, sure, yeah, I agree to all of that. And then we don't even realize sometimes the privacy that we're giving up and the things that some of the apps and things on our phone have access to that we didn't realize it because we are the ones that granted that. We include that ongoing training all the time. And so our teachers will ask for classes. Right now they're asking for one on posting videos and about policies for allowing students to be in videos and should we name students in videos and things like that. So we talk a lot about the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which is federal law, but you also need to know your open records and your student records laws in your own district and your own state. And so all of that is ongoing in training and support, and we just equip our teachers. And we are entrusting children to our teachers and their futures. I believe very strongly that they are trustworthy to be able to handle social media and policies until they're not, right? As a mom, I say trust but verify. And so as long as I can show what the policy is, give great examples of how they can be telling their stories, they go out and do it. If they get themselves in a sticky situation, we're there to help them and work with them on that. Again, not in a punitive way. Certainly there are violations regulations and things you can do that can have some consequences for employment and FERPA and things like that. But for most part, we're partners with our classroom teachers, and we want them tweeting, we want them to share, and everybody has a different level. We have members of our own cabinet, superintendent's cabinet. Half of us tweet, half of us just send pictures to someone else to tweet. It's your comfort level, and we don't mandate or really want to force people into something they're not comfortable. So here's my big analogy, and some of my friends in Innsbruck know that sometimes I travel around with an umbrella to show this, but I want this image to stick in your head for your employees, because in Carroll, we choose to be prepared and protective of our employees and partner with them rather than to be punitive. We provide them with policy that's strong and typically can stand up to challenges, whether they're ethically or legally, or just in the court of public opinion. We want to give them strong policy, and we work very closely on that. And then we want to prepare them, train them, help them to be protected. So if you can imagine, we have this social media storm that can happen, but we have provided strong policy for which our employees can stand protected. So that is the way they protect themselves, is to remain under the umbrella of our district policy. And that's why I felt like it was so important to start with policy and training and strategic goals rather than just jump in and start communicating because we could. That is also a good analogy to remind you that if you step outside of the policy that our district has provided you as a protection, it leaves you unprotected in the storm. And this is a great visual that you need to stick in your head here, because without the umbrella of the policy over you, you have made yourself vulnerable and possibly liable in depending on what you've posted or what you've said. And certainly a lot of people like to fall back, oh, that's my free speech. But I tell my kids all the time, and I tell people in our district all the time, you have the right to free speech, but free speech doesn't come without consequences. And so sometimes there are consequences depending on, certainly our teachers and our staff have a lot of free speech protections for their opinions and things like that. Once they mention Carroll, once they mention their job, once they start mentioning our students or student information, then they really have kind of engaged in an area where they need to be in under the protection of our policy. So what kind of questions do you ask when you're developing a policy? These are going to be basic journalism questions. So those of you who started out in journalism will love these and know these. They're pretty basic questions for almost anything we start with. But you need to decide who can post, who's going to be authorized, who has the logins, who's going to be responsible for those posts, who ultimately has the umbrella for that. Whether that is, and quite frankly, I know, Andrea, that you serve a lot of districts where you're helping them, but we could have administrative assistants and secretaries and office staff that are helping with posting. We can have principals and assistant principals, a lot of classroom teachers. And so there's lots of different roles there. Sometimes we have parent volunteers that are posting for our student groups and our organizations. And that opens up a whole can of ethical worms, because when you stop and think about it, let's just say that the parent who's watching the basketball game and is sharing some of the post and some of the information on the basketball game fails to mention 2 or 3 of the kids that actually did really great, or somehow misinforms through that, then you have this dilemma of they're not an employee. And if they're not an employee, how can you hold them accountable to the policy? So we do have a lot of volunteers that are doing posts as well. And so you need to think through that in your policy. What can we post? Are we going to post, and you'll hear me talk about this, but are you going to post student discipline information? Are you going to post safety issues? Is it all just good PR? Are you actually going to talk about your challenges? Are you going to put statements out about different issues that are important that the media is talking about or that your critics are talking about? And so what you post, the content you post, is very, very important, and that's your ability to do that storytelling. But a lot of people believe that your storytelling is only your good news. There's a whole piece to that. And Carol, we like to say that we do have challenges. And even though we have a lot of celebrations, and those are the stories we want to put forward, and we want the positives, and we think they do outweigh, our policy needs to also address what we're allowed to post. When can we post? How late at night? When are we supposed to reply? How fast should we reply? Should we reply? How often should we post? There's a lot of tools out there with analytics that can tell you the heightened time that everybody's on your social media pages, and literally can help you schedule out down to the minute the best time to be posting. I heard one time at an INSPIR conference that 2 o'clock is the best time to be posting because all those moms are sitting there in their cars waiting. I don't know why they show up at 2 o'clock, because kids don't get out until 3, and we're definitely going to get them home to you. We're not going to keep them. But for some reason they want to come about an hour early. But that's a great time for us to do posts and schedule posts, even for them to hear about what's been happening during the day. Where can we post? What platforms do we use? What is your district using? We have about 4 major ones, but we are not really diving into the Snapchat area. I know a lot of districts are, but we really stick to Twitter. Twitter's king for us, even more than Facebook. We do have Facebook, we have Instagram, and we have chosen the educational account with Vimeo rather than YouTube. We do have some accounts that use YouTube, but for the most part, our district account is done through Vimeo. Why do we post? Again, I'm a strategic communicator. So if I can't go back to someone and say why we posted something, when we posted it, and what the purpose of the message and the target audience, then we're really missing an opportunity to have good strategic communications going. And we're just randomly posting, which can get you in trouble ethically sometimes. How often do you post? Can be really more a form of what's too much. How often? Do you start to lose people at certain times of the night or certain days? We know when we send news out on Friday, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle of things. So we might need to repost because Sunday night and Monday are heavy reader days. So we're going to come to the point. We're not actually going to talk too much about this question yet, but we've got a webinar participants poll. And I don't know, Andrea, if you just want me to put that question up or if you're going to initiate that.
Well, I'm going to try to launch it right now.
Okay.
So everybody should see it. Does your social media policy allow your district to tag personal student accounts in your social media post? So right on top, when you do your post, are you allowed to tag a personal student account in that? Yes, no, or not sure.
Okay, so we can let that poll keep going, right? And I'm going to move forward and I will address this and what we're doing in our district in just a second. I kind of want to see how the poll turns out. So as I move forward, I want to show you what our social media policy is in Carroll ISD. And you see there's lots of really key strong words. And so I've used a lot of colorful text here to show you. But in Carroll ISD, we embrace social media as an effective tool to engage both internal and external audiences in systemic two-way communication. And it's in order for us to do a couple of things: create strong personal connections, lasting relationships, so that there's that longevity. That's why everything we post is so important, because we're building long lasting relationships, not just something that someone's going to read and leave us. We want to be the credible source they turn to. And our overall goal is to increase public awareness about things related to Carroll ISD and our purpose and our mission and our vision, and also to increase support for education. So that'll be in the PowerPoint that we send you and share with you, but you can kind of take a look at that if there's anything in there you want to dig through. There's a lot of INSPIR strategic communication stuff there. For those of you who have your APR, you'll see a reoccurring theme here of the two-way communication that's systemic, and it's not just, as I say, not shoot from the hip, but shoot from the lip. And in this case, maybe kind of texting as you go along and posting as you go along. We have a number of things, and I'm going to put these up here rather quickly. Again, you'll have all these, but we really do have positive outcomes that we use for social media. We want to share key targeted messages at times. So sometimes we do want to reach out and we're talking to the soccer team. Sometimes we're reaching out and we want to hear all the band parents. We want to get a message out. Sometimes it's the media. Sometimes it's our students. Sometimes it's others. Promoting truth and transparency as kind of our ethic responsibility, making sure that everything we post, we can go back and support with fact, and be as transparent as we can within the confines of the law and the confidentiality that we're held to. We want to engage fans, but we really want followers. it's great to be a fan, but we kind of want fanatics who are fanatic followers who stay with us through thick and thin. And when they read something about Carol or they hear something about Carol, then it's like, I'm going to go to Carol and see what they say about this. And I really do think in our community, they come to our social media platforms to see what we're saying. Doesn't mean they're not reading the other stuff, but I really do think they consider us the credible source. And then listening to feedback and input, really listening. I may not get in and comment in the Moms of Southlake group or Southlake Moms or Parents of Southlake, or there's Dads of Southlake. There's all these different groups out there, and some of them have thousands of members. And if they mention Carol ISD, we get notifications, and I know when people are having conversations, but I don't always jump in. Those are their conversations to have. They're allowed to have feedback. And in my opinion, if they're commenting, even if they're unhappy with us, we know how they're feeling and they're sharing. And I think that's a key point to that two-way communication. And then we'll reach out when the time is right. And when we feel like, but sometimes our supporters reach out for us and they speak up for us, and our followers step in and they'll say, oh no, this is where you can go to get this information. And that is way more credible than even us having to come out and look like we're defending ourselves. Sometimes we'll respond to comments and questions. Sometimes we will put a phone number and say, please call our transportation department. Sorry you had a bad experience, but we're not going to necessarily get in a back and forth. We want to connect with people online, but we really judge it on a case-by-case basis and really try to apply our core values and whether or not we think we're going to get a positive outcome out of that engagement. And everybody has people in their community that have nothing nice to say about you. We don't engage a lot with them on social media. If they want to reach out, if they want to call, they want to email, they want to come in and visit with me, I'm willing to do that. But if you're going to be a negative voice in the community always and forever against us, then I'm not going to spend a lot of time engaging with you on social media. There are other avenues and platforms that I choose. But our whole goal is to build public support. We hope we win people over and help us and joining us and working on our challenges as well as our celebrations. But these are just some of the main positive outcomes of our social media policy. I'm going to put these up here, and I want everybody just to kind of read them. There's going to be several here. These are so full of all kinds of stories and nuggets and whatever, but you got to ask yourself, these are not just policy questions, Andrew, these are ethical dilemmas that you can find yourself in. Are your social media accounts are going to be used for safety related messages? Will you post things that might violate the privacy of one for the safety of all? I think back to Virginia Tech shootings and all the laws that changed after that, because a lot of times school districts or universities, they thought were hiding behind FERPA. Well, it was federal law, so it's not a bad thing to follow federal law. But in an emergency health and safety situation, you have to think about what you're posting and how it's affecting the people who might be responding to lockdowns, to intruders in areas, to active shooter situations. Think about the responsibility of what we post. It could cause somebody to respond, and their response could be life or death. That is a huge ethical dilemma. Do we post or do the police post? You know, these are decisions you have to kind of make. And sometimes you really need to talk about them ahead of time because you don't want to be making those kinds of decisions on the fly. How many details will you share in a safety or threat situation? Will you tell how many intruders there are on campus? Will you say how many officers are there, where they are, where they're located? You don't want to give up too many details and compromise a safety situation. But Twitter, Facebook, and even apps that we have, social media apps and accounts, Instagram accounts are great ways for us to reach out in an emergency situation and get information out quickly. And the laws did change after Virginia Tech to kind of say in a health and safety situation, we might need to put a suspect's name out there because they're looking for a suspect and the police have asked for help. And the rights of one might supersede the privacy because of the safety for all. Oh, well, we're getting into this issue. Will we put GoFundMe accounts and will we talk about fundraising? Will we reach out and say, yay, Best Buy, one of our sponsors, or way to go, Ozarka? Do you have a marketing program? Are you going to give shout outs to businesses? What about people who donate money? What about people who are going through difficult situations and there's a GoFundMe account, but you have no accountability or responsibility for where the money is being used? Will you use your social media accounts? Will you use your Twitter and your audiences to be able to do that? How will you handle negative and hurtful comments? Are you going to delete them because you don't agree with them? Or are you going to leave them up there and work to build better relationships? Will you acknowledge student deaths? Andrew, we had a situation where a student was hit by a car several years ago. It was a tragic, terrible, heartbreaking situation. And it was announced on social media that he passed away while some of our students were still sitting holding his hand bedside, because he and his mother, he had decided to be an organ donor. This was an ethical dilemma I was in, because mothers were calling me and saying, we need to explain to these children that they're up there praying for him to get better, and he's not going to get better. And it was the district who had to decide, how do we address the fact that the scanners, the medical examiner, and everyone has already, and the media has already pronounced him dead, but our students don't understand because they're still seeing him in the hospital bed waiting for his organs to be donated. And so we made the decision, and we had never done this before, that when in Fort Worth area, when the organs are donated, they fly an organ donation flag to kind of signal closure, that the organs now have been donated and the individual has died, but life goes on because of their contribution. And we had one of our first tweets in that situation to explain the student had passed away, and that we would post when the flag was flown at the hospital when his organs had been donated. Now, no one ever prepared me for that. That was an ethical dilemma. I was getting pressure on both sides. He's still alive. We need to be honest with these kids, and they can see it on social media. The media is already reporting it. What do we do as a district? So these are tough, tough situations. How will you address mistakes or improper tagging of an account? Someone contacted me one time and said, did you guys mean to tag an inappropriate porn site? Oh no, I'm pretty sure we didn't mean to do that. But you guys know, when you're tagging accounts, if that's something that you do, you can accidentally tag the wrong account, and it's very easy to do. So we didn't have a lot of engagement on there. Thankfully, caught it very quick. A staff member was watching out for us and let us know really fast. And so we have those advocates out there that would let us know. We took the tweet down immediately. In that particular case, it hadn't been up very long. We kind of waited to see if we got any calls or anybody made any comments, and we're pretty sure that we were able to. But sometimes you have to apologize. Sometimes you did something, you tagged the wrong account, you did something that violated your own core values or something, and as a district, you may have to say, hey, we're sorry, this didn't go well. I still wish we could edit tweets, and we can't do that. So you really have to delete and put the correct tweet back up. And so sometimes that damage is done, I understand. Are you going to respond to questions? I'm looking at our poll here. And so a good percentage of our listeners, at least today, do not tag students. And so we don't have a hard, fast rule in Carroll ISD that you're not allowed to tag students. But as I mentioned before, we really spend a lot of time talking to our staff about accidentally tagging the wrong student. Perhaps the student is not, has FERPA restrictions, and the parents do not want their information shared publicly. There's lots of red flags for doing that. Now, we will respond to students who tag us. So we do interact two-way. We typically don't initiate it. Now, we do name students. There's a difference. Last night we had a student, happened to be one of our board members' daughters, who sang the national anthem at a basketball game. You can go back to my tweet. You'll see her named in that because it was a public event and she was announced. And so there was no privacy issue there, but I did not tag her social media account when I did it. She is a Lady Dragon soccer player, and they proudly announced that. So I tagged the soccer team and their account, because it's an official account rather than tagging individuals. So we do have sometimes, our football coach started a really great program that was giving jerseys out to MVPs, which were their favorite teachers. And the students actually tagged the football coach, and he will retweet it. So he's not necessarily tagging his players. His players are posting their favorite teacher in their jerseys, and they're calling them their Dragon MVPs. And you can go follow that hashtag Dragon MVP. Absolutely amazing social media campaign, and I had nothing to do with it. This is what I love about what our staff are doing. And our football coach then will retweet it. And so we have some protections in place, and we're being smart about that. But your district may allow it, and your district may do it, because it is an engagement tool. But those of you that are 38% that aren't sure, this is your first task. When you get out of the webinar, Go find out if, or think about some of the positives and negatives of doing that. So we just started our first student takeovers of our accounts. And at a football game, we allowed our crew, cheerleaders, band, those types of groups to take over our district accounts for a while and tell the story from their perspective. But that takes a lot of monitoring and just really great kids knowing and being responsible with social media.
Awesome. Okay, so Rebecca just raised her hand, which is awesome. And so Rebecca, I'm going to unmute your line right now, and you're hopefully going to be able to talk. Can you try talking, Rebecca? I don't hear her, so I am going to disable talking again. But if you have questions that come up, there's a Q&A bar, and then there's also the chat bot. There's a chat section of the webinar platform. So please, if you do have questions, and maybe Rebecca punched it by accident. So, but you can chat things in, and we will definitely answer those as we go. So.
Well, I'm trying to be mindful of our time. I know I still have a lot. They'll get the whole content. I'm always available. I'm willing to do that. But one of the things I wanted to point out here too is, how does humor and banter fit into your social media? We can hear districts engage with their kids during snow days and things like that, and do a lot of fun, humor, snarky banter. And then you hear where it goes viral and they're recognized for it, and everybody thinks it's amazing. And then you hear stories where someone got fired for the same type of thing. You need to know your community. All the same things about knowing your audience, who's your target audience. We don't use a lot of humor and banter in our safety messages, but we have a pretty amazing Department of Public Safety, and they are known for their humor, their banter about safety messages. And I would have just never thought that would have been a good idea, but they do it quite well. So if you want to follow at South Lake DPS or SLC DPS, I don't know, South Lake DPS, if you Google it, you'll find them, and they have an amazing Twitter presence, and they do a lot of humor and a lot of tongue-in-cheek and a lot of bantering back and forth with people, even when they're looking for suspects. So it's kind of an amazing way they use humor and banter. In the school setting for school safety, we don't do that a whole lot. We've just chosen that as kind of what our policy is. Now, as I go through here a little bit, I want to remind you the golden rule, and obviously this is not per Julie Thannum, but tweet others as you would be tweeted. I heard this and I kind of like it because I think the golden rule always stands. How would you feel if that tweet was about you? And when you're tagging people and you're making comments about people, I think it's a very good rule of thumb. And even though we've lost a lot of good manners and positive relationship building in social media arenas, especially the political arena right now, I still try to use that golden rule in my decisions. I think we need to model and encourage respectful dialogue at all times, especially public educators. We have children watching. We have students watching us, and if they see us bantering back and forth, honesty, trust, respect, that's it. There's no excuse for educators to not have that happening in their dialogue. Now, I'm going to go through 12 things very fast. They're going to be kind of Captain Obvious things, but these are ethics in action, and I want to just say them, and it's going to be interesting because people are going to think, wow, I don't think we really need this. Tell the truth. There are people that don't tell the truth on their social media accounts. They fabricate things, they portray things the way they want. However you want to talk about what truth is, you have to be able to back it up with facts. I hear people say, well, that's the first I've ever heard of it, when I know it's not the first they've ever heard of it. That's not even the truth. So never get yourself backed into a corner that someone can look at your post or look at something you said, a statement you made, and it's not the truth. So be very, very careful. That means you're going to be very intentional about what your posts are. Be loyal to your organization, especially if you were a reporter coming into education. That's very hard. But protect the public interest. We are the conscience of our district a lot. A lot of us, especially in school PR or in administrative roles, we do have a loyalty to our organization. It's who we work for, and hopefully we believe in their core values and we believe they're making ethical decisions, but you also have to protect the public interest. And so that is our role as well. And so when you're posting, you need to remember, what does the public have the right and need to know? Don't share confidential information. We use the example of a teacher going home and on her personal site saying, 3 kids in my class have lice and now my head is itching. She has inadvertently shared information because the families might know in her class of only 18 or 22 kids who the 3 are that were absent. So you have to be very careful. And that's like maybe unintentional and inadvertent. And that's an example of how our policies, if you post something about your job, about the kids, or it may not mean you're fired. Obviously, we're not punitive, but it may mean that your principal's going to come and say, hey, you need to take that down. Some of the parents figured out who the kids are who are dealing with that. So you have to know what parents will allow. You've got to have a way in your district to know if their photos can be shared, and you've got to have very creative ways to be able to use social media posts without violating student information. Don't misrepresent or overstate the facts. That feels like a given, but even on people's resumes, they do that sometimes. Sometimes they present other people's work as their own. Be very careful to give credit. Follow all copyright rules, different things like that. Just never overstate things when you're in your post. Be transparent and forthcoming. You see that transparent word coming up more often, because I think in education we tend to think everything's going to be private and we can't say anything. We may not talk about a situation, but we can talk about hypotheticals, and we can talk about what our policy says and consequences and things like that. And I'm constantly pushing, maybe as my boss says, pulling on coattails of the educators, trying to get them to, let's share what we can and cut down on rumors. Disclose your identity. I never support pretending to be someone else on social media or hiding behind anonymity. People do it to us. I don't think we should ever do it to them. If I'm talking with someone about anything related to Carroll ISD or my profession, I'm going to tell them I work for Carroll ISD. I'm never going to chime in. I'm not going to set up an account that pretends to be supporting somebody or something or sharing information. We're dealing right now with the situation of anonymous accounts that are sharing confidential information, or not even confidential information, just kind of blasting administrators for decisions they're making. And we are choosing not to engage that individual because, once again, you are giving credence, or you're basically giving a platform for them to take their criticism to you, especially if you don't believe it's warranted. But even if it is warranted in a specific situation, anonymity is something they're hiding behind. I think you have a right to not engage with that individual. You got to follow national, state, and local laws. You'd think that would be without saying, but a lot of people just don't know. And I underline district policies because time and time again, when we talk about ethics, people don't even know what the policies in their district are. Go back to your code of ethics. I showed teachers one time in a training session a list of code of ethics, and they said, these are so cool. Can we get a copy of these? And I'm like, it's in your handbook. You signed it, an AUP, that you read it, and it's also state law in Texas. So how do you like that? They didn't even know. And there's just so much on their plate that they didn't realize that those are district policies, and those laws are things that they have to be following. This is so key right now in your social media posts and in everything with anti-bullying laws and with just protecting kids. Protect the civil and human rights of all individuals, all groups, especially groups that cannot stand up for themselves. They might be in a minority position. You are their protector, and your accounts should protect them. They should not in any way whatsoever violate intentionally or unintentionally. But if you have violated that, apologies and action steps need to happen. And I just think, it's sad that we have to say that, but it is our responsibility that school is a safe place for all kids to be, regardless of their differences, their life choices, their circumstances, their socioeconomic background, their religion, any of those things. I hate that we have to say that, but obviously we still do. Ensure neutrality in elections. There's some laws where you have to stay neutral in some elections. I'm not talking about your personal politics. I'm actually talking on behalf of your district, bond elections, referendums, things where you can only put out information. I know that's not the same in all states, but please know that when you're posting that you have to be very careful of word choice. Function as the conscience of your district and encourage people to be strategic about their posts and to have a reason for posts, not just to be putting things out there. And Andrew, you said this at the beginning, decisions that you're making today can set paths for the future and can really set you up for criticism if you haven't really thought those out. Create an environment of ethical accountability, not only for yourself, but for others. When you violate something and say, you know what, I really didn't value relationships in the way I handled that. The post that I did hurt somebody, or something happened and it really did. I need to hold myself accountable as spokesperson for the district in my case, but for your campus, for your teaching team. I have a daughter right now that is working in an agency in Fort Worth, and she's a social media manager. here. She might be listening today, so I shout out to Maddie Thannum. She's doing a great job, and she's a social media manager for companies. She has a great responsibility for ethical accountability, and she knows it's her, not just her job, but it's her reputation, but it's the reputation of the companies that she works for. So it's very, very important that you know what policies and know what you're allowed to do, and that you are aligning your posts with your company, whether it's public education or otherwise. Understand that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. You really need to think through what you're posting to have a purpose and a strategic plan for it. I do have some slides, and these are things we share with our staff. When you find yourself under attack, resist the urge to respond back. I want to make a statement. I wrote it down so I could make sure I said it right, and I believe this strongly. And this is just something that has been on my heart lately. Restraint is sometimes the strongest form of ethical maturity. Not saying what you could say, not using your position, your power, your platform to say what you would like to say, to respond back, to attack. Maybe you don't even feel like it's attack. Maybe you feel like it's just defending yourself. I believe that restraint in our jobs is the strongest form of ethical maturity that we can show. There are times I want to fight back. There's times I want to reply back. And I really think we have to be careful of that. Double checked all your facts. I try not to be snarky. We do have fun sometimes with kids, and we'll, comment on snow days and things like that. But again, I think you got to know your community and know what that threshold is. We never make fun of kids on our accounts or things like that. Do not get in a back and forth in a battle of words online. You can be empathetic without really agreeing with the post because you don't know the facts. Share your contact name and number. Be polite. Be respectful. We have rules engagement on our Facebook page. They're here, so I won't go all of these. We do delete comments when they violate one of these. If they are just against something or criticizing us, we leave it. But if they are using any of these violations in our district, because of our recent circumstances, we're even going with stronger language in our code of conduct and in our rules of engagement on that first one about inappropriate language or anything that's vulgar, obscene, or abusive that targets people for racist, homophobic, sexist, sexually explicit, anything like that. It's coming down off our pages. I can't control your pages, but the district pages are ours. And I know there's a lot of First Amendment rights and opportunities where they can criticize, but you really can, just like you can your student code of conduct. Those are your pages, and you can make sure that people are following the rules of engagement. I do encourage you to set those forward before you find yourself in a situation. So you're not randomly taking comments down. You actually can take a comment down and contact that individual and say, your comment has been removed because you violated number 3 of our rules of engagement. And so we actually reach out and offer an opportunity for them to learn what our processes are.
One quick question on that.
Yes.
Doug from, he's from Wisconsin, Doug Dish. Do high school clubs and sports accounts fall under that policy that you just kind of put down? So he's like, for example, an FFA Facebook account or the boys basketball team account, they're run by a teacher, an advisor. Do you still apply those policies that you just had up to that?
We apply all the rules. I will tell you, we don't manage all those sites. We encourage our staff, again, through training, and we give them kind of the pitfalls if they're having volunteers or parents or students do it, but we don't restrict them. We just try to support them. We try to tell them about the policies and the protections, and then we just don't get that many types of comments that have to come down. I just think I'm just really proud of the way our teachers have listened and learned, and they've stepped out there, and some of them are doing some amazing things, but we really don't get a lot of feedback or concerns. If someone does post something they're concerned about, boy, they're quick to call us and go, okay, what do you want us to do with this? Should we leave the comment up? Should we take it down? And there really is something we apply. I said when the trolls show up, first, just be transparent that you're connected to Carol. If you're going to be a teacher and you're going to comment, they ought to know you're a teacher. But we really don't have a lot of that happening because our teachers are teaching and they're using their social media to tell about technology and engagement in the classroom. They're storytelling. the comments will come more on our sites, but we do have a lot of sites out there, and they all fall under the umbrella of our acceptable use policy. Our students sign an acceptable use policy too. So if they are on an Instagram account that belongs to the basketball team, they're expected to follow those rules. If they're on their personal one, the only thing, you know, that they really fall under is their own student code of conduct, and how that can be applied. One of the things I'll say is the U.S. Air Force has an absolutely amazing plan. I know a lot of school PR people have adopted this. I first saw it from Kristen Majette, who, you know, kind of wrote
I have a version of this. I'll make sure to send this out that
Awesome.
I copied from Kristen's too, but that can.
Very good. So we really ask, you know, we have someone out there right now that's posting a lot of things about Carroll ISD, and one of the very first things I say is the site credible? Are there very many people following it? I don't engage it because then all of my 13,000 followers will be a part of that conversation too. And so we don't give credence to those comments. And so I will follow up if there's misinformation. I'll do everything I can to correct things that are not factual, but we don't always engage with every person that criticizes us. We are not afraid of saying this is what our policy is, and if you'd like to talk about it, here's the number of assistant superintendent, or give us a call, or here's an email. We look at these things and we really do respond or not respond on a case-by-case basis. And this is really great. We didn't establish it, but if you walk yourself through it, it's pretty powerful. I have it memorized in my head now, pretty much. So my staff and I can literally look at a post and apply this without going to the sheet, but we provide it to our teachers and anybody running a social media account that wants it. I just got a couple of slides, and I promise I'm still available to answer any questions. I want to say this because, and not everybody agrees with me on this point, okay? And I didn't put any graphics on this because this is kind of Julie Thannum philosophy right here. I don't think you should fall under the false assumption that your social media disclaimers and personal opinion statements that you put on your profiles protect you from your post negatively reflecting on your school district or your boss. I believe our words always matter. While I know I can have free speech and I can put a lot of my personal opinions out there, even on my personal account on my own time, I have a responsibility as the spokesperson in my particular case for Carroll ISD, just as my second grade daughter has a responsibility to the little, amazing kids and little souls that are in her classroom. She knows what she posts on her accounts. It matters. So you may have the right and the free speech, but I think as educators, we are held to a high standard, a very high standard. Maybe unfair at times, no doubt, unfair. But little eyes are always watching. Public eyes are always watching. And I know that what I post is a reflection of my boss. It's a reflection of my team. It's a reflection of my district. So I'm very careful. When you go to my account, I do have opinions. I'll share the hot opinion with you back and forth. I don't use my personal account for a lot of hot opinions about politics and things like that, because I think it invites a lot of discourse. It doesn't mean I don't stand strongly for things. And I just think that there are other platforms that I choose, but it's very hard for them to separate me. I've been with Carroll ISD for 22 years. When they see my name, they see me, I'm wearing green. That's our school colors. I almost only own green. So it's very hard for people to separate me and the district. So you may not have that position, and you may say, Julie, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to say what I want on my own account, and it says my opinions are my opinions. But I really do believe our words matter, and I can't talk about ethics without talking about kind of that. Remember, a retweet or liking something is generally seen as you endorsing it. We had that recently with kids that were actually liking a post that was against something, and people got very confused about whether the kids were endorsing the negative message or endorsing the people who oppose the negative message. I know I'm not even sure I said that right, but it's difficult. And so you have to be very careful on social media when you're liking things and when you're retweeting things. I think that's almost as important as the original message you put out. When in doubt, I leave it out. I say this to teachers. If you're not sure, I tell this to my own kids. If you're not sure it looks appropriate in your dress, your attire, or what you're about to say, then that's probably a pretty good indication you don't need to do it. And it's the same way on social media. We're there. I know. What do we need to talk about?
Awesome. Well, we've got some really good questions. Can you just hit the stop share?
I can.
And I just, everybody's just taking notes. We've got a few questions up, but it's just awesome because You shared so much good stuff. I'm just going to end it with just a quick introduction or a quick outro, and then we'll get back to all of the questions that had come in. And I've got the chat bar up. If you look at the chat bar, you can kind of scan through them. You guys, Social School for EDU, we love giving you a lot of this free, these free resources, and now you know why I wanted to bring Julie to you. But we have an awesome coaching program, and pricing is changing a little bit on January 1st, and so I just wanted to say, hey, if you are by yourself, social media can be overwhelming for all of the things that we just talked about, and we have a great program. Our team, we have a team of 30 account managers that serve a lot of schools, but we bring that knowledge to you. We actually partner with more than 100 schools right now. We know what's working, we know what's not working. We bring all of that knowledge to the table through both a monthly coaching option and a quarterly coaching option. And so we work with superintendents who maybe do social media on their own. We work with maybe a marketing person or school PR person. But our goal is really to help with communication, school culture, employee morale, student enrollment, community engagement. Maybe got a referendum or bond coming up. And we just love serving them. David there, we got to hang out this summer at Inspira. But we have this quarterly coaching program that helps set up, you know, what are your strategies and what's working well, because guess what? Sometimes it's awesome to brag on, hey, this is really great. We're reaching 10,000 people a week. That, you know, that's really powerful. And that is what I wanted to cover there. Please reach out if you are interested in that program. And now, Julie, you maybe got a chance to look at some of the chat questions there.
I will take a look at them. Can I do a shout out? Tonight is a K-12 PR chat and a combined superintendent chat. So hashtag K-12 PR chat. And I don't have the time. Do you have the time?
No, I don't have the time right now, but I know that I'm planning on joining. So I'm
going to try too.
I'll find it while you answer this first question, which is, what's your suggestion for handling unofficial pages? Like specific pages that are not managed by anyone in the district, but are still linked because of the address, name, etc.
Yeah, so that's tough. I know that we have our logo trademarked and we have a little bit of ability to control that, but our names are not trademarked or copyrighted. And so people can still, you know, set up accounts for dragons and different things like that. One of the things we try to do is I had my staff gather and make a list of all the official accounts. And I think it's important to verify accounts as official and do everything you can for letting people know this is the official band account or anything like that. We have a lot of face-to-face meetings. Social media is not the only way we communicate. I know that you're probably not surprised by that, but it's one of the many ways we can reach a lot of people at once. But I think some of those, and I don't know that I would call them rogue accounts, because some of the accounts are just parents or individuals that are involved with those different groups, but they're not necessarily the official account. I think it's up to you as a district to really communicate, market, and be strategic about getting the official accounts out, whether that is through some sort of a handout that you do to parents or in your handbook or on your website. And if you start hearing about some of these accounts, you know, it's really up to you. You can't control what other people post about you. I mean, wouldn't that be great if we could do that? But we can't. All we can do is make sure that we're the credible source. And so we address those on a case-by-case basis, but usually we can let people know that that's an unofficial account. I've had several Twitter accounts that were set up by kids through the years that, you know, tried to call school off and things like that, and they looked so official. They either spelled the name differently, and we could hardly even tell. Like, we have a lot of R's and L's in our name and Carroll ISD, and they might have put an I as an L or something like that. And we finally would figure out how they did it. We would notify that account manager, even though most of the time they're anonymous, that they were being investigated, and we would report them. And there's some different things that you can do, some privacy type things. We have put out before, I've put out a tweet that says basically, students, remember your dragons, remember our core values. You're starting to get disrespectful on social media. You represent us. We've actually done a little bit of that. And our kids actually police each other quite a bit. So I think in those accounts, you have to, once you know that they're there, I think you need to set up notifications for when they mention you. I think if you can reach out to the people that manage those accounts and have them, if they mean well and they're a parent volunteer, have them merge some of their content in with the official account and help out with the official account. So there's a number of different ways you can do it, but you really can only control you, but you have the audience and you have the ability to reach out and let parents know which accounts are yours and which are not.
Yeah.
That's kind of my best advice there. Do you have any thoughts?
No, well, just the first thing you said as far as that official directory of official accounts is so important. And I look at a lot of schools, you know, social media accounts, and one of the first places I go is their website. Can I find your official accounts right on the homepage of your website? If I can't, then you're leaving your people up to guess what's the right one. So that's an easy thing to check. We did verify hashtag K12PR chat is at 7 o'clock Central.
Okay.
8 o'clock tonight Eastern, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. And today, right now, is December 5th. So anybody recording this, don't go to K12PR chat tonight because this is December 5th. But you can always go back in archives and check out great learnings. And this is a combination between K12PR chat and SUP chat, which is SUPT chat for superintendent. So it's going to be awesome. A lot of great topics, and some which kind of are talking about what we chatted on today.
Thanks, Peg. I saw Peg posted that. I should have known that, but I was so concentrating on this morning that I thought, oh, I don't want to give out the bad information.
You were in the zone. When others post negative items on their page, and on their own page, and it's false, and it's going viral, but it's about student discipline or, you know, something. So what actions do you take?
So there's always some information you can share, and there's always other avenues. So we don't get in a back and forth with individuals, especially going to their sites. I've tried that a little bit. I'm not saying you can't do it. We have gone in sometimes when moms have been in a chat. You know, I'm in the chat as an individual. I'm a mom here in my district, but I've tried to chime in, and there's always, most people appreciate you chiming in and sharing the policy or the actual information that you can share. Most of the time, someone's upset and it's just a back and forth. You can use your own channels. I've even done this with the media. The media inadvertently, or maybe even advertently, put out wrong facts. We've gone to our own site and issued a statement. We've used our own newsletters. We've used our own Twitter account, our own apps to say, you may be reading misinformation. Here are the facts that we can share. We use direct information from superintendent through whether you use School Messenger, Blackboard, anything like that, and your automatic accounts that you can call. So we try to correct misinformation. There's obviously some student information we can't get out. We're like everybody else. We kind of get beat up about that a little bit in the public. They want to know what happened to kids, what were the consequences or whatever. I tend to take them back. Guess you're not going to be surprised, right? My umbrella policy. I take them to the student code of conduct and I say, I'm not going to talk about that situation, but let me show you on a page 110 what it says here. If this happens, here's what can happen. And so we walk them through policy, and we usually can take them back to the student code of conduct. Sometimes the policy is not strong enough. In the case of our racial slur, we're strengthening our policy. We've never done this before. We're going to have a mid-year change to the code of conduct wording, and we're going to have to go back and verify that everybody got the new wording mid-year. So you might ask me later how that went. That hasn't happened yet, but we're working on the tighter controls in that area. And so sometimes people bring it to your attention that your policy is not strong enough. But I think you just have to manage the best you can with the information and audiences. We also like to get face-to-face. So we'll call a meeting sometime about a hot topic. Our board called a meeting recently about race relations and let families just come to the microphone and tell us their experiences. But we did tell them they couldn't talk about individual students or staff members, that if they wanted to write us or confidentially share that, we were always open to that, but not in that setting. So I think finding the right setting, the right way to share your information there, that's when it's great, but there's lots of other tools.
All right, yeah, that's really good. What's your policy for following students? Would you agree that it's best for the official accounts to not follow student accounts as a way to maintain privacy?
So I think that it depends on the account. Carroll ISD, our official account, doesn't follow a lot of kids, but I'm going to go back to, we don't have a lot of absolutes. We could, for instance, we are partnering right now with our student council on a number of initiatives related to diversity, and we could tag the student council president, but we'll probably tag the account instead. But the student council account might want to tag and follow the kids that are involved in their organization. So and maybe I'll use basketball as an example. We may not go out and tag all the basketball players, but the basketball account may want to, and to be able to follow. And so that we can hold kids, especially in extracurriculars, to a higher standard of leadership. And so, we just need to be mindful of the pitfalls. And, I don't know if kids want to be followed by the district accounts, but no matter what, if they're mentioning Carroll, we actually have social media tools that we can geofence. And if they're mentioning us, we probably get notifications about that. We don't necessarily have to follow them or tag them. But your district, it's really up to your district on what your policy is. I have some teachers that follow people they know, they go to church with, their nieces and nephews, their neighbors, but they don't follow anybody else under the age of 18. I have some colleagues that are that way as well. And I think that's a strong policy that you can stick to. But I have others that'll say, I'm going to follow it, trust but verify, until there's something inappropriate that happens, or if I get in a sticky situation, then I may have to go back and, but usually I would tell parents up front. So if you're going to tell kids or parents that you don't follow anybody under the age of 18, I think that helps them not have hurt feelings that you don't follow them back or things like that. So you just have to have your own personal policy or follow your district policy. I don't know that there's any absolute best way to do it. We're cautious about following students.
Okay, that's good. Brett asked, how do you deal with negative frequent flyers? We have a guy who, no matter what we post, will respond with a negative comment, but not something that breaks the guidelines. It's more frustrating than anything, but if you have a good approach, Brett's all ears.
So I do we have frequent flyers too. I trust Brett's a very strategic person, so I know how frustrating that can be, but I also know that in the end, I'm going to go back to my statement that restraint is sometimes the strongest form of ethical maturity. And I think for us to, we just have to understand that we're in the public eye. We are in most cases public schools, and we're going to have critics. The frequent flyers are exhausting. There's always, and I heard the mayor here in South Lake say the other day, we've got 8 or 9 people that are nothing but negative. Everybody knows it. We all have to deal with it. It creates a lot of drama in town. I'm not sure I know exactly all the 8 she's talking about, but I think I probably know a few, but we all have our own, the school districts too. So I think you have to always treat them with respect. If they're filing open records requests, we have to comply with the law. I don't answer every single thing a frequent flyer asks me, because they aren't going to use the information for good. If they have a right to documents or open records, I would certainly, work on that. But they're going to have their opinions almost no matter what we say. So we almost have to just realize not everybody's going to like us. That's hard for us. But I think the frequent flyers can be exhausting. And that's that love-hate relationship with social media I'm talking about, because it really can take a lot of time and energy with your leadership team and your district when you're dealing with individuals like that. Hopefully long-term, either they get on something else and their attention falls to something else and they kind of get off their high horse about you, or you kind of learn that you're not going to win everybody over. I've always heard that 10% of the people are going to follow you no matter what and support you because it's you. 10% are going to be against you no matter what you say because it's you. It's the 80% in between that we really need to spend a lot of our time and energy on. So we don't spend a lot of time on those frequent flyers, but we certainly comply with the law when we need to.
Yeah, and we sometimes use, we don't delete those comments, but if it's something snarky, and I have some districts where it's like an old retired teacher that should know better, but the stuff they put out, so sometimes we'll hide comments. Like on Facebook, we'll hide them. We don't delete them. That person can still see them. Everybody that they're associated can still see them, but they're not there for everybody. So that's one piece of advice that maybe you can use, but I got one last question because we kept you way over and we really appreciate it, Julie. Casey asked, what's your geofencing tool? I'm not sure what that referred to if you were talking
Okay,
about.
so there's all kinds of, so I run marketing too, so there's all types of marketing ways that you can geofence and everything, but there's a tool that our city just purchased for us, which is actually, I know there's more than just one here, but Social Sentinel is the company that we're going to be working with, and our city actually purchased it for us, and we're purchased it as part of our safety and security program. So you can geofence, there's lots of companies in your area or whatever that can do that. And what they basically do is that imaginary fence around a geographical area. And I'll give you an example for safety and security. They can geofence around our stadium when we're playing another team, or if we go out of town to play the team, they can geofence that area. And so if students are in a fight with each other on social media, or they're threatening, harm to each other, or some sort of a safety concern or inappropriate dialogue that's happening, we get alerts. Obviously, we can't control what other students are doing, but we can contact the educators in their district. A lot of times at extracurriculars, you have, again, it's a privilege, not a right. And so we have some consequences under our code of conduct that we can deal with. So the geofencing can be done for marketing purposes. You can geofence around your stadium, and when they leave the stadium, you can say the next game is next Friday night, join the Dragons, and don't forget to stop at our concession stand, and those types of things. So you have marketing purposes. What we're also using Social Sentinel for safety and security.
Okay.
Hope that answered, but someone can email me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, because you're going to get all of the contact information for Julie. And so if you have additional questions, make sure you reach out. You're going to get all of the slides. You're going to get the recording. We're going to give you the your policy, your teaching policy for sure.
Yes.
And then I'll share that guide to respond. And I'm going to make sure to mention that hashtag Dragon MVP program you have. That's great. So just look for your email, like I said, either later today or tomorrow, you'll be getting that. And Julie, thank you so much. So many positive comments, and everybody's going to get a real short survey. So I'll make sure to share that back with you. But thank you for sharing all of your knowledge today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love it. I'm sorry for my little breathless presentation. I get going and I get excited, and sometimes don't take a breath. So
it's all good. Thank you guys so much. And thanks everybody for doing what you do. What you do matters. It's not always easy. People think, oh, you get to be on Facebook all day. We know that it's a big job, but it's really important work that you're all doing. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.